Today I am bringing you my TBR for the R Fantasy Bingo Challenge 2025. So for anyone who has no idea what I'm talking about, this is a reading challenge that was created by the R Fantasy Reddit community. It happens every year and it runs from the start of April to the end of March. So you have a full year in order to take part. So basically there's a bingo board and the bingo board has various prompts. Each prompt has 2 levels. So you have regular mode and hard mode. I'll leave all the details linked in the description because there's also some additional rules, like you can't repeat authors and you can only use one reread. Those are the main ones I think that you need to be aware of, but in this video I thought I would take you through my potential TBR for this challenge. I have a pile of possibilities next to me. These might change because as we go through the year I might decide to pick up other books, or there might be some books that I read and I find that they fit one of the prompts, and so there's no point in me reading another book to fit those prompts, especially because some of the prompts are quite difficult. I think I'm just going to get stuck into it, so I'm going to work my way through the board. I will put the board on the screen so you can see. We're going to start in the top left corner with Knights and Paladins. So read a book where one of the protagonists is a paladin or a knight. Hard mode is the character has an oath or promise to keep. For this, I've decided to go with Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. If you see me looking over in this corner, by the way, it's because I balanced my laptop on a chair next to me. But yeah, for this, I'm going to read one of T. Kingfisher's books because I know there's a series called the Saint of Steel series, and I'm fairly sure that all of the main characters are knights or paladins. I mean, the book is called Paladin's Grace, so I have read several books by T. Kingfisher in the past and really enjoyed them. Don't know if this fits hard mode. I had a look on the Reddit recommendations thread, and I think some of the books in this series do fit hard mode and some of them don't. We'll see whether this first book does fit the prompt. In fact, if you've read the first book, let me know if it does fit hard mode, but this is the one that I'm probably going to use for this prompt, unless I end up continuing the series, in which case I'll use one of the sequels if it fits hard mode. Next up we have Hidden Gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. New releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. So for this, I don't think I'm going to reach hard mode because hard mode is that it was published more than 5 years ago. However, I have a book on my shelves which I'm really surprised it actually fits this prompt. Maybe because this author, I don't think they have a US publisher and Goodreads is very US focused, but Talon Sister by Jen Williams, when I checked, only has about 500 and something ratings. So I'm going to read this because I have been wanting to read more books by Jen Williams for ages. My sister got me this for Christmas or my birthday, not last year, the year before, and the sequel has also now come out. It's a duology and it doesn't look that intimidating actually. Maybe because this is quite a short hardback. I'm very excited to pick this one up because I love the Winnowing Flame trilogy by this author. This one, I believe, is about griffins. I think we follow multiple characters, but it says that it's a world of mythical creatures, ruthless religion, and a magical past that refuses to be forgotten. Very much excited for this one. I've been meaning to pick it up for a while, so when I saw that it had under 1,000 ratings, I thought it would be perfect for this prompt. Next up we have Published in the 80s, which is pretty self-explanatory, but the hard mode is written by an author of colour. For this, I'm probably going to go with one of Octavia Butler's books because I really loved Parable of the Sower, which I read for bingo last year, and I've also read Kindred. She has quite a backlist and some of them were published in the 80s, so I'm probably going to pick up the Xenogenesis series, which I think is more commonly called Lilith's Brood. That would also count for hard mode, so that one's going to be quite an easy one to tick off. High fashion is the next prompt, and I think this is one of the most difficult squares on the board. You need to read a book where clothing, fashion, or fibre arts are important to the plot. One of the examples they give is A Mask of Mirrors, or The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, which I read last year for bingo and really loved it. It's too soon for me to reread it, I think, but if you're looking for a recommendation, then I highly recommend that book and that series. I have got a few options for this, but I'm really open to recommendations. Apparently The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli fits this, as well as Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. I have read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim and I liked the writing. It's YA and I don't tend to read that much YA anymore, but the plot does sound intriguing. It's about a main character who is taking part in a competition to become the Imperial Tailor, so it would fit the prompt perfectly. The next square is Down with the System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. Hard hard mode is not a governmental system. I don't know whether this counts for hard mode, but I've heard that City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky would count for this. I have had this book for years. I got it through the Goldsborough subscription when I was still a subscriber, and I've since bought the second and third book because this is a series. I wanted matching editions, and I still haven't read the first book. Never read anything by Adrian Tchaikovsky, but my partner is a huge fan of his books, so would be interested in reading this and getting a book off my TBR. Also, I'm very curious about this because I've heard that it is set in a city that's under occupation, and I believe it's about an uprising, so this is a potential for this square. However, I feel like with this prompt it wouldn't be difficult to come across a book by accident that would fulfill it, so I might end up swapping some things around. Next up we have Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory. Hard mode is at least 50% of the book takes place within the impossible place. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke fits this apparently, and I've been wanting to read that for a while because I've heard so many people say that it's one of their favourite books of all time. Next up we have a book in parts. So read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. I don't think this is going to be difficult to fulfill. I think I'm going to naturally come across a book that fulfills this. Even hard mode, the book has to have 4 or more parts. I feel like I read a lot of fantasy books that are split into parts. I'm currently working my way through the Malazan series by Stephen Erickson, and those books are each split into parts, so those would count. However, the next prompt is Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. Hard mode is there are multiple pantheons involved, and Malazan literally fits this perfectly, so I will probably use a Malazan book for this prompt because I think it's going to be harder to find a book with multiple gods and pantheons compared to a book that has multiple parts. This next prompt I also don't think is going to be that difficult to fulfill. It's last in series, so read the final entry in a series. Hard mode is the series is 4 or more books long, and I have the perfect book for this. I feel like we'll come in full circle because for bingo last year I read Throne of Glass, which is the first book in the Throne of Glass series, and I, in the next few months, plan on reading Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas. This is book 8 in the series, or book 7, depending on whether you count the short story collection, but either way, it fits for hard mode. I am very excited to finally complete this series because it's one that's been on my TBR for literally years. Next up we have book club or read along, which I feel is pretty self-explanatory. You just have to take part in a book club or read along on the Our Fantasy Reddit. Hard mode is to read and participate in a book club or read along that year, which is not something I can really plan for. I don't know if I'm going to go for hard mode. I would like to, however, I've still planned just in case. There's a Goodreads shelf where all of the previous book club books have been listed, and I found a couple that I have on my TBR. So Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adehi Brenya. This I believe is sci-fi speculative. It's set in a prison, and there's like a reality TV element where prisoners are having to compete against each other for their freedom. I've heard that it's basically commentary on the American prison system, and I'm very intrigued about that. The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez is another option. This I have heard incredible things about. It's a literary fantasy, I believe, and it has one of those synopsises that's very vague. It's about 2 warriors shepherding an ancient god across a broken land. The purpose is to end the tyrannical reign of a royal family. It's a standalone, which is perfect. I do also have The Vanished Birds on my TBR. Obviously, if I read 2 books by the same author, then I can't count them for bingo, but I have convinced myself that Simon Jimenez has the potential to become a favourite author of mine. Don't ask me why, I think it's just from reviews that I've heard. I feel like this is going to be the type of fantasy that I love. Next up we have Parent Protagonist. Read a book where a main character has a child to care for. The child doesn't have to be biologically related to the character. Hard mode is that the child is also a major character in the story. Annoyingly, a lot of the recommendations for this square are books that I've already read because I love parental figures in sci-fi and fantasy. fantasy. So if you want some recommendations, then The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi I think would count for this, as well as The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wong, which is one of my favourite books of all time. The book that I've written down is Monstrillio by Gerardo, Sámano, Córdova. This is speculative, it's horror. I've heard it described as grief horror, and it's about a woman who, after her son dies, she carves out a small piece of his lung, and I believe a creature grows from this piece of lung. It's literary horror, and that is the type of horror that I tend to like. So I've put this down. It is, again, a standalone. I can remember hearing a lot about this book when it first came out, and I can remember seeing so many people putting it on their favourite books of the year lists. Haven't heard much about it since, which could work in my favour because it means that I'm not putting unrealistic expectations on it. Next up we have Epistolary, which means the book must prominently feature either journal entries, diary entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcripts, things like that. Multimedia, essentially. Hard mode is the book is told entirely in epistolary format. I love this prompt because I love this type of writing style. The book that I've written down for this is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I've had this on my Kindle for years and I've heard good things. Apparently this is a cozy adjacent fantasy. I've also heard it described as light academia rather than dark academia, but it has an academic focus. It's about a main character who is writing an encyclopedia of fairies, and I believe the book is told entirely through her diary. I believe the series is complete now as well. The third book just came out, so would be a good time to start this series and see if I like it. Next up we have published in 2025, so again, very self-explanatory. The hard mode is it's also a debut novel, as in it's not the author's first published novel. Most of the 2025 releases that I have on my radar are not debuts, so these wouldn't count for hard mode. But some books that I might pick up include Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V. Schwab, and Catabasis by R.F. Kwong. I'll probably read all of the above at some point this year, but none of them are debuts. So if you have any recommendations for debut fantasy novels or speculative novels that are coming out this year, then please let me know. Next up we have Author of Colour, so read a book that's written by a person of colour. Hard mode is to read a horror novel by an author of colour. I was thinking I could pick up The Good House by Tanana Reeve Dew for this because The Reformatory was one of my favourite books of last year. P. Jelly Clark is another author I want to read more from. I read Ring Shout a few years ago and thought it was fantastic. I know he has a few other books, however all of the books that I know by him are fantasy, so they wouldn't necessarily count for hard mode, but I feel like I have quite a few options for this one. Next up we have small press or self-published, and the hard mode is the book has under 100 ratings on Goodreads or is written by a marginalised author. I would love some recommendations for this square because I'm struggling. A lot of the books that I was initially considering, I've since found that they've been picked up and are being traditionally published. Maybe it's because I was looking within the romantasy genre, and romantasy is so popular right now. All of the books that I was interested in, I'm still interested in them, but they've been picked up by traditional publishers. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. Next up we have Biopunk, so read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. Hard mode is there's no electricity-based technology involved. This one I need to do some more research on because honestly, when I first saw the prompt, I had no idea what it was talking about. However, I've looked through the recommendations list and I've seen The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett would work for this, so that's a possibility. Frankenstein could also apparently work for this, and that's a classic that I'm really interested in, but I've never read. Next up is Elves and or Dwarves, so read a book that features the classical fantasy archetypes of elves and or dwarves. Hard mode is the main character is an elf or dwarf. This reminds me of orcs, goblins and trolls from last year's bingo board, which I really struggled with. So I might just end up rereading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. You are allowed one reread per board and this might be mine. I have never listened to the audiobook for this. I've only ever read it physically, and I really want to try the audiobook narrated by Andy Serkis because I've heard it's fantastic. The last time I read this was nearly 5 years ago, so I feel like I am due a reread. It did also occur to me that if the next Feybound book by Sarah Zara Alarifi comes out early enough next year, then that could also count because that has Fae and Elves. Next we have LGBTQIA protagonist, so read a book where the main character is under the LGBTQ+ umbrella. Hard mode is the character is marginalised on at least one additional axis, such as being a person of colour, disabled, a member of an ethnic, religious, cultural minority in the story, etc. I don't think I'm going to struggle to complete regular mode for this, but I might need to do a little research for hard mode. For now, I'm going to put in the next Wayfarers book by Becky Chambers. I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet a few months ago and loved it. One of my favourite books of the year so far. I think the next book I need to read in this series is A Closed and Common Orbit. This is a series of companion novels, but they're set within the same universe and there's a few crossovers in terms of characters. So very excited to hopefully continue this series this year. Next up we have short stories. So read 5 SFF short stories, or for hard mode, read an entire anthology or collection. I have never read The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. However, I am very intrigued by the Dandelion Dynasty, and I was thinking maybe if I read a short story collection by this author, then it would help me become acclimatized to their writing, because the Dandelion Dynasty, if you've not seen it, the books are huge, so it feels quite intimidating going into that series having not tried anything by this author. But I've heard The Paper Menagerie is incredible. Next up we have Stranger in a Strange Land. So read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. Hard mode is the character is an immigrant or refugee. Apparently Emily Wilde would fit this if I don't use it for the epistolary prompt. Otherwise, I've seen a few people suggest The Ministry of Time by Callie-Anne Bradley, which I'm planning to read this month. In fact, I think it's going to be the next book that I pick up, so I could use that. That one is about people from the past being brought into the future. I think that would count, so could be a good one to go for, especially considering I'm already planning on reading it. Next up we have Recycle a Bingo Square. So use a square from a previous year as long as it doesn't repeat one on the current card. I don't think I'm gonna plan anything for this now. I think I might do a little research at some point, maybe once I've got halfway through the year, depending on how many squares I have left to go. I might go for something that's a little harder, or I might go for something that's really easy. But if you've taken part in any of the previous bingos, let me know if there's any prompts that you thought were particularly fun to try and fulfill. Next up we have Cozy SFF, and the hard mode for this is the author is new to you. Travis Baldry has a new book coming out later this year called Brigands and Bread Knives. This is the sequel, I think, to Legends and Lattes, which I have read and loved, so this wouldn't count for hard mode. However, it would be a really easy way to tick off the prompt because I'm definitely going to read it. Sangu Mandana, the author of The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, also has a new book coming out, so I could read that. Again, it wouldn't count for hard mode, but that would be an easy way to complete it because I definitely plan on reading it. There is a book that I've tentatively put on my TBR that's by a new to me author, and that is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. I've heard good things about it and I would be interested in picking it up, mainly because I've seen the hardcover and there's a cat on it and it's really cute. Next up we have a generic title. So read a book that has one of the following words in the title: blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword or throne, and plurals are allowed. Hard mode is the title contains more than one of the listed words, or contains at least one word and a colour, number or animal. I've written down The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri because the Burning Kingdoms series is one of the series that I would like to prioritise this year. Next up we have Not a Book. So do something new besides reading a book. For example, watch a TV show or play a tabletop game. I am taking part in the Magical Readathon this month, and one of the prompts for that is to watch a TV show or movie featuring dragons, and I had some great recommendations on my TBR video. I need to go through them and see what's available through any of the streaming services that I have, but I will probably tick this off at some point this month. Then the final prompt is pirates. So read a book where characters engage in piracy. Hard mode is not a seafaring pirate, which I think is going to be really tricky to fulfill. Maybe it won't. Let me know if you've got any book recommendations for hard mode, but the book that I've gone with is Tress of the Emerald Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I've also just realised this has a pirate ship on the front cover and on the back, which I hadn't noticed before, but this came out I think in 2023, and I put it on so many TBRs, never got round to it, and now it's one of those books where every time I see it I feel guilty that I haven't read it yet. So very excited to hopefully get to this within the next year. I believe this is a Princess Bride retelling, or maybe it's not a retelling, but I think it's very much within that sort of vibe. We follow a main character who goes on an adventure, and yeah, I'm very excited for this one. Of the Brandon Sanderson secret projects, this is the one that I've heard the best things about. Also, I haven't read a Brandon Sanderson book in literally years, so it would be nice to get around to that. And then at some point I will also read the Stormlight Archive, because yeah, still haven't done that either. That does bring me to the end of this video though, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Let me know if you're taking part in our fantasy bingo and what you're hoping to read. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.